newcomers into English, at least when viewed from the perspective of someone who spends most of her time paddling around in English's very beginnings. While words like wife and man have the deepest roots, many others appear much more recently, inventions of what linguists call modern English, the version of the language which has evolved from the beginning of the 18th century to our present day. But what about the English that came before? The 1,000 and more years spanning Anglo-Saxon Old English, medieval Middle English, and the early modern English of the 16th and 17th centuries. Was there just radio silence? Gaps and voids of meaning ready and waiting to be filled with words not yet coined? Or did women have useful terms within reach before this more recent set of inventions? There might, I realized, be a lost history of women's words. With the aid of dictionaries and glossaries, I trekked back into the first 1,000 years of the English language to find the beginnings of women's words, our now forgotten vocabulary, like an explorer going far inland to locate the origin of some mighty river. There's something perverse, I know, about turning away from a vast flood to find the soggy patch in a field or the unimpressive spring bubbling through a rock which marks its source. But there's a certain satisfaction in knowing a word's history, and a certain magic in finding the very first articulation of a particular idea or experience. There's no need to fall for what linguists call the etymological fallacy, the idea that a word's initial sense or its etymological origins must determine its current meaning. English today is many Englishes, a global ocean system of different varieties and local currents. And when words flow out into their wide oceans as millions of speakers use and abuse them, their meanings broaden and change. This book will map out some of these evolutions. From time to time, words get lost along the way, and this book rediscovers them too. These early English words for aspects of women's lives have so much to offer us today. It's clear that working women, for example, aren't a recent invention of modernity, but a long-established workforce who are as proud of their labors as we are of our own jobs nowadays. Paying attention to the first vocabularies of caring, motherhood, and maternity shows that these three words are not exact synonyms which demand that all women be maternal and motherly. The histories of words for the ages and stages of female life cycles explain some of the pigeonholes into which society still wants to post us. The origins of the terms we use today for violence targeted at girls and women expose the deep-dug foundations on which perpetrators build their excuses and justifications. But as well as showing us what we're up against in a patriarchal world, these words might also inspire us. Any lingering sense of shame we might feel about menstruation, for example, is dispelled by the past's enthusiastic and fluent discussion of this topic. In old words, we can find surprising new thoughts about our body's capacities for desire, for pregnancy, and for much, much more. These old words might also embolden us to find as many new words as we need to express exactly what we think and feel. And there's nothing to stop us finding fresh purposes for aged terms. As women have slowly made progress towards equality, we've paradoxically lost some of the most expressive and eloquent bits of English vocabulary for describing our lives and experiences. Like vintage tools laid out for sale at a flea market, we can pick up these older words, puzzle out their purposes, compare them with today's language, and see if we have any use for them, decorative or practical. Heading back upstream, this book explores women's words in the English spoken in Anglo-Saxon, medieval, and early modern Britain up to around the year 1800, as well as casting some glimpses overseas as the horizons of this language were expanded through exploration and colonization. My mother tongue's history begins with Old English, the language brought to England's shores in the 400s and 500s by migrants from Germany, Denmark, and the Netherlands, some of whom were from tribes called the Angles or Engels. By the year 600, written records use English to name both some of the people living in England and the language that they spoke. This name, English, gains currency rather quickly, so you might think that other languages like late-spoken Latin and Brittonic were rapidly swept away. Yet the arrival of English didn't bring about wholesale and immediate ethnic and linguistic cleansing. On the ground, there was a mix of cultures and plenty of multilingual speakers for many decades, until English dominated in the 9th century. In this book, I use the modern adjective Anglo-Saxon to describe the people and cultures of England between the arrival of these migrants and the Norman conquest in 1066.